Good evening and welcome back, folks, to another week of the Canadian Football Fanatics weekly show. Blake and I coming at you once again on a Wednesday night at 6 p.m. sharp. Actually, I guess not sharp, 6:04 sharp. To talk some more Canadian football every week throughout the CFL season. Blake, how you doing, buddy? Thanks for joining me.
I'm good. Good weekend this past weekend over at the BC Lions home opener, and just finishing up the work week right now, which is kind of why the camera's not on, and we'll get ready for week 3 in the CFL.
Yes, we will indeed. So, as Blake was talking about there, we were able to be in the house for the BC Lions 2024 home opener this past Saturday. The energy in the building was unbelievable, as high as it's been in my time, I'd say, being a fan, especially in my younger years, not being able to take in a lot of, not taking in any playoff games or just not really remembering any crowds of upwards of 50,000 me attending any BC Lions game. So just atmosphere was unbelievable, and it was a fabulous time. Excited for many more times that we'll be at BC Place this season. This is only the start. So before Blake and I get going here tonight, folks, as always, like, comment, subscribe wherever you're tuning in, whether that be Twitter, YouTube, follow, rate, review, all that good stuff, especially on YouTube. Please head on over there, folks. Subscribe to the channel. We are at closing in on 200 subscribers, 187 now we're up to, Blake. 13 short of our goal of 200 subscribers by Canada Day. So we are running out of some time, folks, but we do have, a little over 10 days here. So my faith is high still in you guys that you guys will be able to get that done. Unfortunately, folks, I see the statistics of who's tuning in, who's not. A lot of people that are tuning into our content here on the channel are not subscribed. I believe last time I checked, it was 75% of the people that are consuming some of our content on YouTube, whether it's YouTube Shorts, YouTube Lives, some of our podcast episodes, anything like that. Over 75% of people aren't subscribed to the Canadian Football Fanatics. They're just scrolling past in their algorithm. So please subscribe, folks. You'll see us a lot more in your algorithm, in your timelines, all that good stuff, and it helps us out a ton. So, Blake, before we get into it tonight, folks, I'm glad that nobody can tell, I don't think. Hopefully I'm sounding okay, but I did go to the dentist this afternoon, got my some of my teeth cleaned up there, and I did get some freezing in the left side and right side of my teeth. So I feel super off. I hopefully don't look it, but battling through a little bit of adversity, especially with the freezing in the gum still. To me, it feels like I have fat lips and I'm slurring my words a little bit. But as of now, I think it's all good. Coming in clear from what I believe my co-host told me, although he didn't say anything before we went live that I wasn't slurring or sounding too bad. So just so you know, before we get going into the show tonight, I'm going to change things up here a little bit, folks. Blake and I were able, like we were mentioning, at the BC Lions game last week, felt a little bit like we were kind of missing something. Obviously, last year, if you guys were tuning into the Coast to Coast Gridiron channel, we were doing the post game lives every post game, after every post game of the BC Lions, and we thought, you know what, let's start this up again. And obviously, we weren't able to do it last week with Father's Day on Sunday, and then kind of not wanting to do an episode on Monday with us going live on Wednesday. Blake and I are going to start doing our BC Lions post-game lives once again on the Canadian Football Fanatics YouTube and Twitter. So you can find us. Not too sure if we're going to be live every time, but you will be able to find us basically like maybe a 25, 30-minute video of us recapping the BC Lions game, quickly just talking about our thoughts, and hopefully people are able to join. Like I said, if, Blake is a season ticket holder, Blake's at the game, and for whatever reason, I'm over still on the island, and Blake's kind of, has some things he can't get home right away. Maybe we'll record the next morning and get it out to you guys, not in a live feed. You guys can consume that on the YouTube channel, and it won't be, unfortunately, on Twitter. But still will be our recap every week after the BC Lions games from now on. And what a better time to start than this week, folks. BC Lions traveling to the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, a very vulnerable Winnipeg Blue Bombers, I might add, folks. So we will chat about that here in a moment, folks. But I did want to get back on track here. We will talk enough about our BC Lions here in a bit. We are going to introduce kind of a new segment to start here. And we're going to kind of make things a little bit quicker so that hopefully our shows aren't going for maybe we can get them down to 90 minutes instead of upwards to 120 in that 2 hour range. We are going to start implementing a new quick little segment with our BC Lions recap. We won't have any need to kind of talk over what just happened this previous week of the BC Lions. We'll be able to do that in one video ourselves. And not wanting to spend too much time recapping the previous week of everybody else. I feel like we always get sidetracked. It kind of takes us a little bit. We're going to implement a new segment called the 2 minute drill. And the 2 minute drill, basically, folks, is going to be every episode. We're going to start this with the 2 minute drill, and it's just going to be 2 minutes that we're quickly going to go through the scores of the week from this past week in the CFL. So for us, it's CFL Week 2 that we're going to talk about here in this 2 minute drill for the first time. Not too sure if my partner is able to hear me right now. I'm going to kind of go solo a
I
little
can hear you.
bit. Okay, perfect. So, Blake, so I guess maybe your thoughts and kind of just, I was mentioning, I'm not too sure if you heard anything about our BC Lions recap and stuff like that, but are you excited to be doing post-game shows for the BC Lions again?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was a fun time last year. We didn't have the weekly, well, we did, but our weekly show was for the BC Lions, and it was after all BC Lions games. Our buddy Jay, I know he's tuning in here today. Tuned into those quite often. So for people like Brian and anyone else who's kind of newer to the show, they'll be introduced to those post game shows. You'll get to hear my rants live because as Cole found out last year, there was a couple of games where like I got home and I was not happy with the performance of the BC Lions. And if you get a couple days to kind of simmer and rethink things and whatever, then maybe you change your tunes a bit. But when it's live and it's maybe an hour or two after the game, those thoughts are pretty fresh in your mind still. So it's pretty raw and pretty real emotion that you guys will be hearing on the post game shows.
Yes, absolutely, Blake. So before we get into the 2 minute drill, Blake, like I was mentioning, quickly going to recap this past week. But we do have some viewers in the chat. Shout out to our good friend Jason, Hussey's Huddle, and his channel over on YouTube. Everything he does with the Markcast and all their CFL content as well. So go check that out, folks. If you guys can find him on Twitter, YouTube as well. They have some good weekly shows as well that you guys can consume during the CFL season. Blake, we also have I believe a viewer from south of the border, if I'm not mistaken. The TX, I believe, is Texas. He says coming to Vancouver for this year's Grey Cup from South Padre Island, Texas, I believe. Last year in Hamilton was great despite Hall of Fame being closed. So, RDCat0811. If you guys are in town, or if you're in town for Grey Cup, definitely hit up Blake and I on social media. We'd love to have a drink with you and celebrate the festivities throughout the week. So, Blake, let's get into it before we waste any more time. And I'll pull up my quick timer here. Do we have 8 people tuning in so far, people? So if you guys aren't subscribed, please head on over to the YouTube. Subscribe as we chase down 200 subscribers on YouTube. I believe we're up actually to, what are we? 391 on the Instagram as well as Twitter. I want to say, what are we at, Blake? 100
I honestly
and
have no idea.
109 on Twitter, which is pretty cool. So we need to catch up though. It's a good amount though, considering we haven't started or we haven't had the Twitter as long as Instagram. I believe we probably had Instagram for about 3 months now, the Twitter for probably only a month. So hopefully by the 3 month mark, we can have about 400 followers on the Twitter. So folks, you guys can follow us and find us on all the social medias. I guess except for Facebook, TikTok, but all the important ones like Instagram, like Twitter or X, whatever you guys want to call it. Blake, let's get into the 2 minute drill here as I start the clock. Boom. So, firstly, we had the Ottawa Red Blacks stunning the Winnipeg Blue Bombers in the first matchup of the week last Thursday in a 23-19 thriller for the Ottawa Red Blacks in their season/home opener. Obviously, them coming off the week 1 bye. And although it was impressive, I think it was just kind of it was a nice, calm and cool approach from their quarterback Drew Brown. But I think their team overall, they weren't shying away from the spotlight of kind of opening up in Ottawa at home with a little bit more expectations with their crowd, with their fans. And they delivered with a big W. And I think although Winnipeg looks a little bit vulnerable, I definitely tip my cap for a good win to Ottawa to start the year. And in Friday Night Football, we had Montreal winning in Edmonton. Edmonton giving another game away, 23-20. And the Elks keep on elking again. And Montreal looks impressive once again. Unfortunately, folks, I guess we'll save that for later. Edmonton is in some trouble, and we will leave it at that. In Saturday's matchup last week, we had the BC Lions in their home opener in front of 50,000, and the BC Lions walked away with a 26-17 victory over the Calgary Stampeders in their home opener. And although the BC Lions walked away with victory, great effort by the Calgary Stampeders and Jake Maier in that offense. They played a great game, especially Jake Maier. He was throwing the ball around BC Place. And it was a great game to watch. So in the final game of the week, we saw on Sunday, I was about to say Sunday with a thrilling comeback from the Saskatchewan Roughriders over the Hamilton Tiger Cats, 33-30. And wow, was that a thrilling one. We saw Keon Schaefer-Baker, Canadian, with, I believe, 2 touchdowns, and Trevor Harris leading them to a 10-point fourth quarter comeback. What was a terrific game to watch there in the fourth quarter. Was kind of in and out of the game, but what a finish. And to come back to my couch for that finish, what a treat I was in store for on Sunday. So that'll end our first 2-minute drill segment of the year, Blake. Now we will, because we didn't really have a recap episode this week, and we have some time to kill because we don't have a guest on the episode this week, we will kind of take things to the West Coast now, where Blake and I are, and start to focus on our BC Lions for probably the next 45 minutes or so. As always, 7 o'clock, we will be back for our pick segment with Shane from 13th Man Sports. As always, going through the week that is in the CFL and making our picks for the week, who we're liking, talking a little bit about the game and all of that. So stay tuned for that at 7. That'll be a lot of fun. But until then, we got about 45 minutes, Blake, to talk about our BC Lions. Now, because we didn't get our chance to do a full recap episode, we will take the chance for the next, maybe 10, 15 minutes to recap what we saw at BC Place, talk about our feelings, kind of the atmosphere, all that good stuff. And then at about 6:30-ish, we will shift our direction to Winnipeg and Week 3, talk about the game ahead, preview that, and that's what you'll be able to see from on a more weekly occasion. After the 2-minute drill, we will get into our BC Lions preview. That'll kind of be 2-minute drill. BC Lions preview will be from 6 to 6:30. We possibly might look into moving the pick segment to 6:30 if it works out with Shane. And then 7 o'clock until the U Sports season starts, that'll be kind of our hour to maybe have our guests or whatever happens. But when the U Sports season does kick off, folks, I will remind you that the reason why we did change to the Canadian Football Fanatics, we will be talking about U Sports. Might even throw in some CJFL in there in that half an hour period from 7 to 7:30. And make sure we kind of recap the week that is in Canadian football as a whole. So stay tuned for that. Blake, as of now, buddy, let's get into it. And before we do, actually, I guess a couple quick shameless plugs. One for our quick little recap video that we made outside BC Place afterwards, like you mentioned about the lives that are cool. It's kind of our raw emotion, right? Not able to digest anything other than what you just saw with your own 2 eyes. So you do miss a lot. I like to, watch games that I attend in person. I like to go home and kind of rewatch it on the TV copy and just get a better idea. Being in an environment, you can get distracted sometimes. You're celebrating, you're high-fiving. If you're consuming a couple of pops, maybe you go get a drink or something, you're going to the bathroom. going to get food, all that stuff. So you miss some stuff. Um, that being said, Blake, let's just get into it before wasting any more time. Blake, how excited and how happy were you to be in the building with 50,000 other people cheering for the BC Lions?
Yeah, man, that was absolutely amazing. Like to see 50,000 people in the building. I think like you, I might have seen that one other time. I think the 2014 Grey Cup that was here in BC. Unfortunately, the Lions were not in that game, but I'm pretty sure that one was a sellout. Other than that, though, I've never seen that many people at BC Place. So it was pretty cool. I mean, people can talk about all they want. I'm not going to name names, but anyone that follows my Twitter about people were only there for 50 cent and yada, yada, yada. But if you look at the numbers and you look at the pictures from the first half and the second half, even if, say, like 10,000 people left at halftime because they were there for mostly 50 cent and nothing else, that means that still almost 45,000 people stayed at BC Place to watch what turned into a really good game. Cole, is the Calgary Stampeders put up much more of a fight than I thought they would. Through 2 weeks of the season, I think they're a lot better team than a lot of people thought they would be. And thankfully for us, our BC Lions were finally able to pull away at the end of the game and win 26-17.
Yes, it was, Blake, and I'm glad you touched on it. You kind of saved me a little bit from ranting about it. I obviously saw, your Twitter feed and saw the tweets going around from, some Twitter feeds that have, a significant amount of, followers on social media and stuff like that. And I hate when people with, a big platform like that can kind of, paint the wrong picture, I guess is maybe the right way to put it. And like you mentioned, Blake, I think it's probably not fair to say that half the stadium left for anybody that was in attendance. I think more like 10,000 is probably accurate. I think in and around that number, no more than 15,000, no less than probably 5,000 in that area. I wouldn't be surprised. I can definitely speak from experience. Blake, the two people that were to the left of me actually left pretty early. Was pretty. They made kind of clear that they were there for 50 cent and pretty much that only. But like a lot of people were mentioning, he came for the concert, but he also bought a BC Lions hat, and his girlfriend bought the 50 cent shirt. So that's merch sales. Beer and food sales and stuff like that. They also purchased a ticket. So kind of just to avoid a rant. I hate when people are irresponsible that way because it's just a terrific thing for the CFL and not only the BC Lions, right? I think seeing that across the CFL or from other markets, I think probably only motivates other owners, other teams to try to one up or try to do better than the BC Lions when it comes to events during the season openers, that sort of stuff, concert kickoffs. I wouldn't be surprised if maybe some teams start to implement that across the league, in the next few years of starting the season, making it kind of like a party, making it entertainment like the NFL tries to do, like all the other leagues down south try to do. And I think the CFL could definitely take some learning lessons from this and try to implement it even more. So was just super cool to be in the building with 50,000 people. It was my first time being in there. And to, I guess one quick shameless plug before we kind of get into a recap of things, Blake, we'll quickly kind of go through, a game quarter by quarter recap. Go check out my BC Lions recap over at 13th Man Sports article. Going to be trying to do those a good majority of the season as well as my power rankings article, but we'll see how that happens we'll see how consistent those stay with us doing the recap shows as well as when U Sports and CJFL season starts. My focus kind of shifting to them as far as writing purposes, anyways, because I kind of want to start at the ground up because I'm able to have a little bit more access with the VI Raiders here in town, stuff like that, before I kind of work my way up, especially being so new into the whole writing space. So go check out my article over there. You guys can see my thoughts a little bit more, kind of take you through the game, and then my little bit of thoughts at the bottom there. So 13th Man Sports, you guys can find a bunch of good CFL articles. I know Shane, that'll be joining us in a little bit, has his Ottawa Red Blacks articles every week. A ton of good stuff over there at 13th Man Sports. So you can find them on Twitter, on Instagram, as well as I believe actually they might be on TikTok as well. So go subscribe, follow, all that good stuff to them. And Blake, let's get into it. The BC Lions had a slow start with and probably was Blake. I'm not too sure how you felt. I was slightly underwhelmed with kind of the energy, I guess, that carried on. And I think that has some a good majority of to do with probably the start of the game by the BC Lions going 3-0. Calgary scoring on their second drive of the game. And it kind of just being a little bit of a very sluggish start for the BC Lions offensively. Obviously, Calgary was getting a ton of pressure on BA early. I will say, not to the offensive line's fault. On rewatch, definitely being in the building was quite frustrated, but on the rewatch, a lot of 6, 7, 8 man pressures where BC is just unable to block up that many guys. So just good scheming by Calgary. They definitely had a game plan coming in that they wanted to pressure BA, pressure that offensive line, especially with 2 new starters, and they were able to do that a little bit. So 7-0 for Calgary, and they open up the scoring on that Marken Michelle touchdown. I believe it was Jordan Perryman in coverage, but it was on a little bit of a rub slash pick play from one of their slots. I want to say it was maybe Reggie Bagleton. Was kind of making it look like he was running somewhat of a slot fade route. Kind of ran into Jordan Perryman a little bit, got a rub on him. Wasn't able to fight through the traffic, and Michelle was freed up for a walk-in touchdown there early. And then to end the first quarter, Blake, something that was really it was a pleasant surprise to me on rewatch was um, William Stanback being able to get going there to end the first quarter. I believe he had maybe it was 3 or 4 rushes there to end the first quarter. Probably had maybe about 20 yards there, so averaging 5 yards a carry. And it was super good to see because I think we both have been pounding the table to establish William Stanback a little bit more. Try to run the ball because I think it helps out the offensive line when it comes to the pressure. When it helps out to them, just helps out them overall. When you're kind of in your pass it all game, the defensive line can kind of pin their ears back and really start to feel like there's no threat to have to run defend. They can really just pass rush all game, really be aggressive instead of having to kind of slow up and kind of maybe second guess, check for the run, and that half second of hesitation is kind of all you need in the professional level. So great sign to see was William Stanback close out the first quarter, and then 3 plays into the second quarter, we had Justin McInnis, who continues to break out here, folks, scoring his second touchdown of the year. And we in the corner of Blake, actually, and I guess this is a good time to go to Blake. Blake, how cool is that for you to be in the corner of the first BC Lions touchdown of the year?
Yeah, man, it's really cool. I mean, sitting where my season tickets are, it's not that surprising. It happens fairly often. I mean, it might sound cocky, but that's just where my seats have always been. But yeah, no, it was definitely you see the TSN angle. You did a really good job on the kind of Justin McInnis clip, and I stand up and I kind of point at him. I'm like, yeah, you the man. So no, it was definitely cool. I was worried it was gonna get called back because there was a flag on the play, but luckily that was against Calgary, and the Lions tied it up early in the second quarter.
So, if I may actually, Blake, take a step back before the Lions did not actually tie it up on that one. We actually had the first of 2 blocked extra points on Sean White on the night, which was a little disappointing. I know there was a clip of VA that was he was kind of frustrated. I believe his mic'd up clip, but hopefully nothing more than just a few mental errors, blocking misassignments, and people are able to shore up their assignments next game. He did kick 2 other field goals, if I'm not mistaken, that were good. So just the extra points, oddly enough, that were blocked. So the Lions actually trailed 7-6 after that, and then want to say it was maybe another 3 plays after the McInnis touchdown, maybe 5, including the extra point and kickoff, that Ben Haladic got a tipped interception, giving the ball back to BC. Unfortunately, BC wasn't able to do anything with that possession. I believe they ended up punting back to Calgary right after that. But Blake, I guess this is the perfect time to talk about Ben Haladic quickly. He was everywhere. Being in BC Place, you definitely saw that. I know friend of the channel, We were able to meet for the first time and hang out. Jordan tweeted during the game that he was seeing that too from where he was sitting, that Ben Hladek is making a lot of plays. I believe he finished with 10 tackles, 3 tackles for loss, and the interception. So was Ben Hladek jumping off the page to you in the stadium, Blake?
Yeah, no. Sorry, there's a just leaving work here, so there's a train in the background. But yeah, no, definitely Ben Hladek stood out. I don't know if I'm kind of stealing your segment here, but I was gonna give my BC Lions ball to Ben Hladek. As you mentioned, it seemed like, especially early on in the football game, it seemed like he was everywhere making tackles. He finished with 10 overall. As you said, 3 of them for losses, the 1 interception. So he had a really good game in the home opener on Saturday night.
No, I'm glad you put your game ball in there already, Blake. I'm gonna be honest here, live on the air. I'm still pondering who I'm gonna give my game ball. If I'm being honest, folks, I've thought all day about it. I've been at work. My kind of my work thoughts throughout the day on a Wednesday now have kind of came into a routine. It's the 3 keys of the game for the Lions, and then who am I going to give the game ball? So I've thought about it all day at work. Haven't been confident. I was going to give it, Blake, honestly, to Justin McInnis again and be a sap to give it back-to-back weeks, but I feel like that's just you can't do that. So I'm gonna think until the end of our BC Lions segment in about 30 minutes, and then I will give my game ball then. But until then, Blake, let's get back into things. Second quarter, Ben Hladek tipped interception. And actually, I guess I shouldn't say that nothing did come from that possession, Blake. After the Ben Hladek tipped interception, that's where we tied up the game from the Stefan Flintoff punt that went into the end zone, giving us a single point and tied up the game at 7-7. So, Ben Hladek credited, I guess, with 1 point, a turnover point. So then in the second quarter, following a couple drives after that, Alexander Hollins with a wide open pass down the sideline that I believe was coming to the end zone that we were in, Blake. Opposite sideline, obviously, but a brutal drop that I think the whole crowd in BC Place was stunned. But I believe it was another maybe 4 or 5 plays later on that maybe very next drive. He makes up for it, catching a touchdown pass from Vernon Adams, and Alex Hollins continues to step up. While the loss of Dominic Rhymes, Keon Hatcher still injured. Um, you know, I would love to argue that Justin McInnis is probably, or I would love to argue that Justin McInnis is the receiver one of the team, but I think that still belongs probably to Alex Hollins as of now. I just think VA looks to him a little bit more. I think he trusts him more. You can see with the targets, um, all that sort of stuff. So, Blake, what's your opinion on Alex Hollins and how he's done in the offense through 2 games as the wide receiver one?
Yeah, I think Alex Hollins has been okay. I don't think he's been excellent. I mean, he'll be the first one to tell you I'd say that was probably the worst drop of his entire career that he had on Saturday night. He's not going to be happy about that one at all. Unfortunately for the Stampeders, fortunately for our BC Lions, he made up for it fairly quickly. But yeah, I think there's definitely, kind of like we talked about in the post game at the end of the game, much like the same for all the Lions. There is a little bit more to be desired from Alex Hollins. Unfortunately, he had that drop. There was a couple other plays in the first 2 games that I'm sure he'd like to have back. So you know what, Cole? That's really a good thing. The Lions are 1-1. They won their home opener, and yet we're complaining and saying that they could be better. Like, can you imagine how good this team really will be if they're able to hit on their full potential at all during this season?
Yes, and I'm glad you mentioned that, Blake. Coach Campbell said that in the locker room. I believe it was after both games. But getting back into things, and I guess I'll bring into the chat here Jordan and Bobby. How could I forget actually running into Bobby, the CFL record holder? And Blake, let's get back into things. 14-10 was the score going into the locker room at halftime. What was your feeling after 30 minutes of play, Blake, and how satisfied were you, or maybe unsatisfied were you with the Lions play?
Yeah, I'm glad you went there at the end. I was really pretty unsatisfied with the Lions. I didn't think they played well at all. I thought they were probably lucky to be ahead at halftime against a better team, maybe a Montreal. Maybe Winnipeg's not as good as we thought they were, but we're about to find that out on Friday night against a Winnipeg, against a Toronto team at full strength, or even as we saw in week one with Cameron Dukes, sorry, they'd probably be losing that game. So I thought they were pretty lucky to be ahead at halftime. And, but I thought they played better in the second half. And of course, that led to the victory.
They did indeed. They did indeed. So, in the second half, although they did play much better, it started out in Calgary's favor, actually. And Calgary marched down the field, putting it into the end zone, capped off by a highlight reel catch from Reggie Bagleton. That was actually, I believe, in your end zone as well, Blake, just on the other corner. And definitely, what a catch that was to see it on the jumbotron afterwards. I believe it was on Kent. Um, I
Ronald
don't know
Kent,
why I'm forgetting Ronald Kent.
Ronald
I
Kent,
was
yeah.
I believe it was Ronald Kent that was in coverage, but the adjustment there late by Reggie Bagleton was unbelievable. I think Ronald Kent was in great position. He just wasn't able to get his head around, maybe to make a play on the ball, but I think he was in fabulous position, and it was just chalked up to Reggie Bagleton making a better play than Ronald Kent. Interested to see. I believe Shanti Evans is back practicing. I believe he missed last week due to family matters.
Yeah,
I
sorry to cut you off, Cole. The Lions have confirmed that he is available for Friday night's game.
Yes, that's great. Because I know there were some people that were quite hard on him from what I saw on social media, that him being Ronald Kemp, but I didn't think he had a bad game. I think there was the little bit of a error, I guess, coming up that we'll talk about on the Josh Woods fumble. But other than that, I think it was his first start in the CFL game in a regular season game. So interested to see how he starts in maybe game 3 and 4, where he's a little bit settled in, gets his feet wet a little bit more, and we can maybe see the true Ronald Kent, hopefully, because I think the confidence that we've seen in things like arrow up, if he can get that throughout or in a regular season game, I think that'll be only good for him. And I think there's another level for him to reach coming up. So will be interesting to see if he's on the field to get to that level. So let's get back into things. And after the Calgary Stampeders went up 14-7, BC responded immediately with a field goal by Sean White. And the result of, or the reason I guess why of the field goal was the field goal team was sent out was I don't know if you remember, Blake, the Travis Fulgham. I hate to say it because I did say it in my article, but it was a very contested catch, and it would have been a terrific catch. But if um, and I guess it's a little bit unfair because Reggie Bagleton's a CFL veteran. Travis Fulgham's still getting a little bit used to it, but I feel like if Reggie Bagleton's making the catch he just made previously, I would have liked to seen Travis Fulgham come down with the ball. Now, Blake, I feel like you're getting spoiled. Was that in your corner of the end zone as
Sorry,
well?
go
That
ahead.
that Travis what were your thoughts on that, Blake? And did you think that maybe it
I
was a harder catch? Were you disappointed that he didn't come down with it, or what were your opinions on that?
Yeah, no, I was a little disappointed that Travis Fulgham didn't come down with that catch. Unfortunately for Travis, he actually had a really bad game. I think he finished. I came across a tweet that Roar Report had, and I believe he was no catches on 5 targets or something like that. So I'm sure there was another one, I believe in the fourth quarter, where it looked like him and VA weren't even on the same page. Fulgham kind of cut to the inside, VA threw it to the outside, and it just fell to the turf. But yeah, no, Fulgham, I thought he could have made that catch. Unfortunately, he doesn't, and the Lions were forced to kick a field goal to tie the game. But I thought that's when the Lions defense also kind of took over, as of course, with the final score being what it was, the Reggie Bagleton touchdown was the final points period that the Calgary Stampeders were able to muster on Saturday.
Yes. So the Lions kick the field goal after the Fulgham drop, making it 17-17. and I believe both teams traded possessions. The Calgary drive to start the first quarter or second half was, I want to say, it was well over 7 or 8 minutes, and then BC responding with a field goal drive consumed another 4 or 5 minutes, consumed most of the first quarter or third quarter there, leaving only another few drives. I believe BC punted, or I believe BC went 2-and-out punting, and then Calgary might have had a first down or two and then punted again, killing the rest of the third quarter. And then we get into the fourth quarter where we have, I believe was the Josh Woods, or actually Josh Woods fumble was a little bit later in the game towards
Later,
the
yeah.
end of the game, if I'm not correct. I believe on the first drive of the fourth quarter was the drive with Justin McKinnon featured, as well as Stanback was having a little bit of success running the ball. And then it was with a wow play from Aiden Eberhardt, ran a little bit of a corner route, came wide open, looked like he was dropped in coverage, gets behind the defense. VA hits him, and he hit him in stride, but almost a little bit too far in stride, causing him to kind of lose a little bit of balance and kind of making his momentum go head over tea kettle. And then he kind of does a little bit of a somersault. Nobody touches him, so he gets up, tries to run into the end zone, but is tackled on the 1 yard line. Unfortunately for him, could have been his first career touchdown. And then BA comes in, scores on the next play. And obviously, Blake, this is where everybody is all happy and stuff like that. But I'm still pounding the table that we need to figure out a better situation for our
Short
short yardage.
short yardage. Absolutely.
Yes,
No,
we
because we were told like before the game that well, not us personally, but like Lions fans were told that they were gonna kind of split short yardage duties between Dolagala and VA. Kind of more with Dolagala getting these short yardage snaps, and that did not turn out to be the case on Saturday night. It was once again VA taking all the short yardage snaps, and all I could think of every time he lined up behind center was, "Oh gosh, not again!" Like he was injured in the Toronto game. We had heard, or at least I'd heard, some rumors that it was a lot worse than it turned out to be. He was obviously able to play on Saturday night, but it's something that I think he's going to be dealing with for a few weeks now. And over a course of what is now 16 game season, having already played 2 games, the Lions just can't afford to have VA taking hits like that. As Jake Dolagala, I'm sure he's a capable backup, but he's not a starter in the CFL. There's a reason he's the backup for the BC Lions right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's not even, let's keep him with a ball cap and a clipboard on the sideline. No offense to Jake, but I don't even want to have the idea come into mind. Or let's not even talk about Blake. So let's get on to the BC Lions going up 23-17, and after that it was a little bit of a slow period. Both teams kind of going back and forth. Defense is stiffening up in the fourth quarter, knowing kind of the significance in the air with only 15 minutes remaining. And then I believe after Calgary was driving with under 4 minutes to go in the game, um, they have a Jake Mayer's kind of in the pocket. He's kind of contained in the pocket as well. He's going through his reads. He's going through his reads, and then probably 3 or 4 seconds in, he sees that I want to say it was Dedrick Mills. I know they were using about 2 or 3 running backs actually. Calgary. I think it was Dedrick Mills. He sees him in the flats, but I don't know if he just missed Ronald Kent or maybe Ronald Kent was hiding behind the defender. But Ronald Kent was pretty much in front of Dedrick Mills. That if he throws it like an A or B ball, it's intercepted for sure. But instead, he kind of throws it like a C ball with some height and air under it, and it somehow gets over Ronald Kent and in his outstretched arms. Dedrick Mills catches it, but Jordan Perryman comes upfield, makes the tackle, and pops the ball out. Now the ball is laying loosely by the sideline, and Josh Woods makes the smart play, knocking it out of bounds, giving BC possession. And was super funny to hear actually last night, Blake, on the BC Lions on Tap series, or a little radio show that they do every Tuesday nights, if I'm not mistaken, on is it 980 CKNW?
Yeah, it
And
is.
you can
Yeah.
find them kind of interviewing players, talking about the week that was, talking about the week that is for the BC Lions. And he mentioned having some friends in attendance there that he played with at UCLA that obviously play American football and stuff like that. And I don't know if you remember, Blake, but Josh Woods had quite the celebration after. Got up pretty excited. Obviously, the whole defense was pretty excited as well. But his friends were kind of asking his parents, like, why are they getting so excited? Like the ball went out of bounds. That means it's Calgary football still. But the nuances, the kind of the different rules of the CFL come into play, and having that IQ. He also credited Coach Campbell kind of going through one random rule or one random kind of CFL quirk or uniqueness every meeting or kind of every week. It's a weekly kind of thing. So to prepare your guys for something like that, I think it's kind of it's almost like a Bill Belichick thing. I think we've heard throughout the years of Bill Belichick always giving them situations in practice. 3rd and 3 from this yard line in the fourth quarter this way after a flag or whatever. Those super minute details and kind of being prepared for those, I feel like can really help your game. And Josh Wood's not hesitating to smack that ball out of bounds, knowing that his team's going to get possession is a huge credit to Rick Campbell preparing his team for the rules and for the game, so that when it comes time to the game, there was no hesitation to make the play. Knocks it out of bounds, and BC gets the ball with 3.5 minutes to go in the fourth quarter. And then BC drained the clock from there, giving the ball to William Stanback, letting him do his thing, what we acquired him for in Montreal. I believe he finished with 15 carries for around 65-ish yards, maybe 70-ish yards. And I think he could have even had some more touches. I think maybe his sweet spot could be around 15 to 20. Even I would like to see it around maybe 17 to 22. Not taking the ball out of VA's hands too much, but I think it'll only help the offensive line. It only help and give confidence to William Stanback, giving him some more touches, letting him feel the defense a little bit more, letting him get in the flow. And the BC Lions closed it out on a 47-yard field goal with 30 seconds to go from Mr. Automatic, Sean White, getting on the board once again, making it 26-17. And that was the final. Calgary had, I believe it was maybe 20, 30 seconds to go on
There
the
is
clock.
one thing I want to mention, Cole, before we leave this game for Winnipeg this Friday, though. The one thing that did happen after that Sean White field goal that made it 2 scores and pretty much, well, it did seal the game for the BC Lions was Christian Covington was able to pick up his first sack of the CFL season on that last ditch Calgary offensive possession, I guess you can call it. I mean, I guess technically they could have gone down and scored and maybe tried an onside kick, but the last possession that Calgary had the ball, Christian Covington was able to pick up his first sack of the CFL season.
Yes, I'm glad you mentioned it, Blake. I wrote a little bit about it on my article. If you haven't checked that out already, go over to 13th Man Sports, check that out. And was cool to see. He talked about it post game that he did his. I'm not too sure if you've seen Blake his father's celebration, the little banging of the drums or whatever, banging of the
I did,
bongos.
yeah.
Obviously switched his number to his old man's dad and mom in the building. He also joked that, I believe it was Modes that asked, hey, is Pops kind of busting your balls a little bit after the game? Kind of hey, you could have had a tackle here, you could have had a sack here. He said, no, that's mom that's giving it to me after the game. That's saying, you should have done this, son. You could have had this. So you love to see it, and obviously a football family through and through. So Blake, glad you touched on that. Christian Covington closing the deal and making it a 26-17 final. Blake, before we get into it, I got a little bit of news live on air for you and for the listeners. Unfortunately, some things have came up for Shane here tonight. So Shane will not be joining us. So we will kind of run the BC Lions talk a little bit longer. So I apologize for anybody that isn't a Lions fan. But if you're a CFL fan, please stick around. We will
Brian!
also be doing our
Sorry.
picks. We will be doing our picks segment a little bit later on. Probably in about I'd say 20-ish minutes. Give us some time to preview this week's game, and then we will do our pick segment as always. And Blake, guess what, buddy? I think this week and this week maybe only we can get out of here before 90 minutes. Let's maybe set that as a goal here tonight. We got
Nah, I don't
45
believe
minutes.
you.
We got 45 minutes to go, Blake. Let's see if we can do it. I don't know if we can do it, folks. So let's hope so. Let's cross our fingers. Blake, let's get to this week. I think that's all I wanted to say, right? I believe, right? Lions
Should
close
be,
out one
yeah.
and one. Blake, is there any final thoughts? I guess, buddy.
No, no, I just wanted to give a shout out. I'm sure our buddy Brian's over there in the chat. He always seems to enjoy when Shane's on his transit route home. So I hope you're enjoying that I'm driving home today, Brian, instead.
I don't see Brian in the chat as of now, but maybe he is, or maybe he's consuming it later. Because, folks, as I always remind you, you guys can watch the episode later on. You don't have to consume it live on Wednesday nights. You guys can go to the Canadian Football Fanatics YouTube channel, press the little live tab. When you press the live tab, all of our lives will come up. So that means, yes, folks, our free agency, our draft, all the good off-season content that was part of the live series. You can find that our training camp episodes, our season previews. Go over there to the live tab, hit that. You guys will get brought a bunch of good stuff that you can consume later. Unfortunately, you're not able to have the access of interaction with the chat and stuff like that, but you're able to still see the good content, hear what we're able to talk about on a weekly basis. Blake, let's get into it without further ado. The BC Lions are traveling to the vulnerable Winnipeg Blue Bombers, the 0-2 Winnipeg Blue Bombers, this Friday night for some Friday night football in the CFL. And man, am I excited for this one, Blake.
Da-na-na,
Blake
na-na-na.
Danana is right. I can't wait to hear the Friday night football theme music that I love so much that brings me back to a kid and getting home on a Friday and knowing that I don't know if you remember Blake, but the Lions I feel like used to play so much on Friday nights back
They
in the day, and I
did.
used to love that. I loved coming home on a Friday and being able to watch the Lions. It's kind of like the Canucks, when you came home on a weekday and were able to have a Canucks game to watch. It's like, man, I was looking forward to that all day at school. Made the day go by that much faster. And boom, the game is here, and we're able to watch a good football game. So I used to love that and can't wait for it this week. Now, Blake, I know you've been very vocal. You've been very, I don't even want to say confident, but you've been very vocal, like I mentioned, of kind of the Bombers' demise, is what a lot of people are calling it. And
Yeah,
you know
they
what,
stink
calling
now.
it as pushing them off the cliff. What are your thoughts? What are your early thoughts here on the BC Lions traveling to Winnipeg this Friday?
You know, all joking aside, I just said the Bombers stink. I won't go that far in all seriousness, but I'm a little worried about this Friday's game. The Bombers are going to be really pissed off. They lost their home opener against the Alouettes, the team that beat them in the Grey Cup. They then went to Ottawa, a team that a lot of people, us included, have thought that they're going to be improved, but probably a team that's around third in the East. So probably a team that Winnipeg should feel they should beat. They withstood a long, long weather delay, drove all the way to Ottawa's 7 yard line, and then couldn't finish the deal and ultimately fell to 0-2. So I feel like the Bombers are going to come out guns a blazing, to kind of use that term. And I think the Lions are going to have their hands full. If they kind of take the Bombers lightly, we could end up, and I don't think, I know I didn't, I know you didn't. I don't know if anyone would have predicted that at the end of Friday night, the Winnipeg Blue Bombers and technically the BC Lions could enter week number 4 with 1-2 records.
Wow, indeed that would be. I have thought about that quite a bit, Blake, and that was not on my bingo card to start the year. I will admit that right now. And to be honest, Blake, I think this is if for those, another cheap plug for my article. For those that did read my article, I did say that, is this, dare I say, a must-win game for the BC Lions 3 weeks into the season? And I don't know if I
It's
can fully get on board with
it's
myself. That's why I just had to ask the question. But I think it is as close as it comes to a before, because to me, must-win games are for later in the season. They're for anywhere past
after Labor Day.
yeah, anywhere past week 12, anything like that. But for me, this is as close as it comes to a must-win game. Now, yes, I said that with the BC Lions seeing
Okay,
the
let me
Winnipeg Blue
ask.
Bombers again in a few weeks. This is still a must-win game. You need to put your foot on the throat of the Winnipeg Blue Bombers on Friday. There needs to be no questions left. You need to win the season series to have no questions by the end of the year. that if the Lions want to win, Blake, let's get real here. If the Lions want to win and get to a Grey Cup at home, it has to be played at BC Place for a Western Final this year. You cannot go on the road, no matter how bad of a season Winnipeg has, and think that you're going to win in Winnipeg, because you're sadly mistaken once again. Because this team, for whatever people
Heck,
want to write about them,
who's to
or write them
say?
off already, has the pedigree of a championship team. They know exactly what the stakes are come November. Not maybe to the extent of a Golden State, a Kansas City Chiefs, a New England Patriots dynasty quite yet, but they have the pedigree where they know in the back of their minds. Kind of, we saw it a little bit last year when they were dominant last year, but people were a little bit unpleased with some of their victories. Right, there were some closer games than people were accustomed to seeing in Winnipeg. A lot of fans were kind of yeah, we're winning games, but these are closer games. They're feeling a little bit different. This team knows exactly what they're playing for. And sometimes when you're kind of, this will be the fifth year they're trying to get to a Grey Cup. Do you think they're really worried? And it's, I shouldn't say really worried, but I'm over exaggerating a little bit. Do you think this team is worried about losing games in June opposed to playing their best football come September, come October, and come November when it comes to the most important time of the year? Now,
No,
yes,
absolutely not.
out now. I'm saying this because I think at 0-3 they can dig themselves out of a hole. At 0-4, you're not digging yourself out of your hole. You're not going to be the 2011 BC Lions. I think this game is hugely important to try to bury the Winnipeg Blue Bombers as much as you can behind yourself, and separate that gap as much as you can, because Blake, if people haven't noticed, the Western Division is probably a lot better than I think a lot of Lions fans were wanting to give credit coming into the year, including myself. Writing off Calgary coming into the year was eighth on my power rankings. Calgary
Yep.
looked a lot better for the in the first 2 weeks of the season, and I cannot wait to see how they keep kind of building on this, because I think they're only gaining momentum. And Saskatchewan, Blake, 2-0, winning or leading, excuse me, I shouldn't say winning, leading the Western Division as of now, seeing Hamilton once again in the back to back. They could very well be 3-0, and although it is hard to beat a team back to back, they could be very well 3-0 and continue to lead the Western Division after 3 weeks. As I pass it to you, Blake, this is as close as it gets to a must win game for the BC Lions before Labor Day.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you, Cole. I'm going to quickly pass it back to you with a question, though. And I know that we're talking about the Lions and the Bombers right now, so I don't want to spend too much time on this. But isn't it kind of odd that we're talking about this being a must, or potentially a must win game for the BC Lions, when it's the Bombers that are 0-2? And if you look across the province next to us, the Edmonton Elks are also 0-2. They go to Toronto this week. You said there's really no must win games before Labor Day. I think this week is a must win game for the Edmonton Elks. I mean, again, we won't spend very much time on this at all, but there was fans last week at Commonwealth Stadium already in week number 2 that were chanting, "We want Trey" again.
I believe that
Um,
started in week one, Blake. But yeah, we'll get into it a little bit more. You know, I love my Trey Ford and Edmonton Elks talk, so we'll get into it a little bit when we get to the picks. Let's stay on the BC Lions here, Blake. And
okay.
for me, like I mentioned, I think you kind of agree. It's as close as it gets. Like I said in my article, I didn't want to kind of officially stand behind that statement of saying it's a must-win game. What I said was, dare I say, and I think that's kind of the right words to approach it with. It's as close as it gets. Dare I say this? The Lions must win this game. I think for the expectations of the year, if they want to kind of have the season that not only fans want, but them in that locker room. Those guys are professional athletes, and they want it probably more than all of us fans, right? So if they want to live up to expectations, I think they got to take care of business. Make sure you make. I think the reason why it's funny, Blake, that teams outside of our fan or kind of our favorite team is because we're Lions fans. I don't really give a crap, to be honest. As much as I like Winnipeg and like Edmonton, I don't give a crap if they get 0 or if they're at 0-3. leave
Yeah,
them
no,
in the
that's a fair
and
point.
leave them in the dust, and freaking that's one less competition for us because like I mentioned, the two other teams above them are already good enough. I think although the Elks keep elking, which gives me not very much confidence that they're going to turn this around. They still are competitive in these games, Blake, where they're still in these games. They're just finding ways to lose for whatever reason. I think MVT's brought a little bit of uh, more stability than a Taylor Cornelius last year, but he's still not looking like MVT from his Grey Cup run with Toronto. And it's kind of just it's such a weird thing in Edmonton because the last few years, and I guess let's say that before we get too distracted. But like I mentioned, I feel like that's the only reason why we have a little bit of it's kind of odd that we're talking about the Lions must winning at 1-1 while the Winnipeg Blue Bombers are 0-2, possibly on the verge of 0-3, and
No,
that's why I
it's
think
already in week 3, Cole. It's a huge swing game because if the Lions win this game, they, as you mentioned, they lead the season series 1-0. The Lions and the Bombers play each other. It's going to be 3 times in the next 8 weeks, I believe it is. I believe the other 2 matchups are week 7 and week 11. And so they lead the season series 1-0, and they'd also be 2 games up. So theoretically, with them leading the season series, they'd be 3 games up on the Winnipeg Blue Bombers going into week number 4. Where if the Bombers win, all of a sudden they're in the driver's seat. And yeah, it's only week 3, but if you look at the standings, Calgary's on a bye this week, so their record isn't going to change at 1-1. Saskatchewan has a real chance of winning at Hamilton again, so potential for them to be 3-0. Who knows what the Elks are going to do? It is potentially that these 2 teams could be tied for the 3rd and final playoff spot after week number 3 in the Western Division.
yes, it could very well be. Blake, let's get into another talking point that we were talking a little bit about earlier, and that is, well, the news that we did get today that wide receiver Javon Catoy is out for this week. Obviously left last week's game with a hamstring injury. Not too sure. The cool thing about being on the sideline, Blake, I'm not too sure if you pay attention to it, is you're able to see like one, the sideline interactions, but also when people go into the tent and out of the tent, what's kind of happening with kind of injuries, all that sort of stuff. Javon Catoy went into the tent earlier in the game, and then came back into the game. I want to say it was on the Justin McInnes catch in the second quarter. I want to say it was second quarter. It might have been third quarter. It was the one where he cut back, Blake. The one where he caught it going right and then cut back to the field into the
Left,
middle of the field. Yeah, and it was on that one that he kind of came up limping. Looked like almost one of those classic hammy things where you get shot in the back of the leg, you grab that back of the thigh, and you kind of limp. And then I believe he went down. Trainers came out. What was seen obviously on the sideline with some ice on his hamstring after he was ruled out of the game. Coach Campbell said it was nothing serious earlier in the week when he met with the media. Mentioned that he wasn't even ruled out until today. So the first 2 days, obviously, he was trying to battle through it, maybe try to get as much treatment as he could so that he could go. But ruled out is Javon Catoy. Now, Blake talked a little bit about Travis Fulgham. I will correct you slightly because it's not really much better, but he did have one catch on 6 targets for 9 yards, if I'm not mistaken here. And having 6 targets with one catch is just not a good catch percentage. Is not showing a lot of faith and trust. You're not putting a lot of trust and faith. Or I guess I should say you're not getting a
into
lot
your
of
quarterback.
trust and faith.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
exactly.
got what you were trying to say, Cole.
Thank you, buddy. You're a good co-host because you can finish my sentence for me, Blake. Um, where I will throw it back to you is, who do you think and how confident are you that said person will step up to be the third option this week in the BC Lions offense between either Aiden Eberhart, Travis Fulgham, or I will say or include Stanley Berryhill, who we could see activated for the first time in the regular season?
Yeah, I will correct you a little bit, Cole. I believe, I guess we won't know 100% for sure until the depth chart is released tomorrow. But what I heard on social media today was that Stanley Berryhill will slot in for Javon Katoy, and Aiden Eberhard will move to the inside, I believe it was. To answer your question, though, that's a really good question. Fulgham, Berryhill, or Eberhard? I would have to lean towards Aiden Eberhard, just simply because, kind of what we just talked about a moment ago. If I'm Vernon Adams Jr., I don't have a lot of faith in Travis Fulgham right now. I believe he made 3 catches in week number 1, but they were only for like 59 yards, and one of them was a 50-yard touchdown. So his other 2 were combined for 4 yards or 9 yards, pardon me. And I don't know if he was targeted otherwise. Whereas, and then we talked about the 1 for 6 on Saturday. Aiden Eberhard, he hasn't gotten a lot of touches this year, but he's 2 for 2 when he's been thrown at. And both times he's been thrown at, he's made spectacular catches. The game in Toronto, I believe it was like a 29-yard catch. He leapt up between 2 defenders to kind of snatch the ball out of midair and make that catch. And then the one we talked about this past Saturday where VA kind of let him a little too far. He does a somersault, but he has the smarts and the wherewithal to know the rules, know that he wasn't touched, and get up and run for a good 10 or so yards. Unfortunately, being stopped a yard short. So I like Aiden Eberhard to step into that number 3 role. Of course, behind Alex Hollins and Justin McInnes. VA, I'd also like to point out that I think William Stanback will become more involved. It's the Lions' first game. Actually, that's not true. They played in Toronto. I was going to say it's the first game out in the elements, but really there is no elements here in summertime. The weather across most of the country is pretty good, unless you go to Ottawa, which the Lions don't do until late August. But I haven't seen the forecast. I don't know what the weather officially is like for Winnipeg on Friday night. But I would expect the Lions to continue what they've been doing so far this season and throw the rock around the turf.
All right, Blake. I too believe it's probably going to likely be Aiden Eberhart, but to play devil's advocate, I will say that I wouldn't mind the idea of it being Travis Fulgham, due to the fact that I feel like they put a lot of trust and faith into this guy. That they signed him early in the offseason. He was obviously a guy that they wanted to bring in. I don't want to say take over for Dominic Rhymes, but kind of a bigger body receiver that they lose Dominic Rhymes, bringing him in. Obviously, it's not a one-for-one swap out, but a guy that's a similar playing style. I think for the sake of it kind of wanting to work out, it wanting to pan out, I think you kind of need to gain some confidence here with Travis Fulgham. To me, although he did kind of show that he dropped and was on the wrong page too many times, 5 of them to be honest, last game. I think you need to go back to him, kind of like when you drop a ball in a game. You need to go back to him to kind of give him some confidence. Say, hey, I'm not going anywhere. I'm still going to give you the ball when you're open. And I think just because I think unless Aiden Eberhard starts to build, because I think there's something in Aiden Eberhard. I think there's a reason why people have kind of compared him to that Brian Burnham type guy, where he's super reliable. He's came into camp as like that guy wearing the '70s jersey. He's earned his way on the roster, kind of fighting through practice roster, stuff like that. Come back, been a lot better, gotten better in the offseason, worked his butt off, grinded to get better. And I think it's starting to pay off. And I'd love for Eberhard to kind of make things interesting, but I think the kind of plan to start the season was to have Aiden Eberhard kind of basically be a stand-in for Keon Hatcher. I think the plan was to have Keon Hatcher slide back into where Aiden Eberhard is playing and keep Travis Fulgham as one of the 5 starters. So I think for the sake of you that wanting to be kind of come true, I think you need to kind of get some confidence in Travis Fulgham. Like you mentioned, after his touchdown catch last week, not much production in his 2 catches, and then in the 1 touchdown pass, yes, it was absolutely great that he caught it and got in the end zone. We've seen that it's not very it's not as easy as guys, or it's not as easy as I'm trying to make it say, but it's sometimes you kind of lose focus and stuff like that. We've seen with Alex Hollins, right? So maybe go back to him, give him a little bit of confidence. Let's see what he can do with maybe a little bit more targets, a little bit more uh, some a little bit more energy if he's kind of getting the ball. Hopefully making some plays, and we will see how that pans out. I will go with Travis Berglund. Blake will go with Aiden Eberhart. Blake, let's get to the defense before we get to our picks of the week and get out of here. As I'm trying to get us out of here before 7:30. Blake, on the defense, we got to see the linebackers. We talked about Josh Woods. We talked about Ben Halata kind of stepping up. What was a good game from both of them making impact plays. The defense taking home 4 sacks. Got to see Christian Covington's first. I think the secondary has kind of been the talking point throughout the fan base in the first 2 weeks. Cameron Dukes and Jake Mayer have kind of been able to do whatever they want, passing the ball. And although that's not entirely on the secondary, it's I would say at least half on the secondary, right? Because it's never all in the secondary, like I mentioned. You can kind of include the pass rush in there, right? Can the guys get to the quarterback? Can they affect him? If not, he's hanging back there with a bunch of time, right? To expect DBs to cover them more than 4 or 5 Mississippi's, anything that's probably unrealistic, especially in man coverage. In zone, maybe it's a little bit more easier to do because you're covering zones, but in man to man, these guys are fast. You guys are athletic, and DBs are going backwards the majority of the time. So to keep up to them for 4 or 5 seconds is I feel like a little unrealistic. I feel like the secondary is kind of, I don't know if it's the weak point, but maybe the reason why this defense haven't kind of been as maybe dominant through the first 2 games. I don't even want to say dominant, as good, I guess I should say, because they by no means were they a dominant group last year. They were a very good group, but curious to see how the secondary kind of bounces back here after Jake Mayer throws for over 300 yards. Looked very good. Blake, as you know, as maybe a few of our listeners know, I am not the biggest Jake Mayer guy, and he had a terrific game there on Saturday. To see it live in person, man, I was still almost after every completion, I was like, man, and he didn't make too many down the field throws. If I want to say like maybe 5 or 6, like 15 or more throws. He was just taking what the defense gave him, but he was kind of always going to the right read. I think he, in Jake Muir fashion, maybe only had 6 or 7 incompletions once again. So took care of the football, put in the end zone when they needed to. Didn't turn over, or one interception, excuse me, after committing no turnovers in week 1. So I'm curious to see how the secondary bounces back. I will give them a little bit of slack when it comes to the maybe continuity throughout the group. Pretty much, if we're being honest, Gary Peters is realistically the only returner. Manuel Gamba played a lot of he was a little bit of safety, a little bit of will last year, a little bit at half. So they kind of had Manny kind of playing all over the place, being a very active player. Wasn't the full time starter at half last year. Obviously, we had TJ Lee and Marcus Sales, and then Adrian Green. Although he is kind of taking over, I believe he started 8 games last year. Wasn't the full time starter last year, and then we obviously had Shantae Evans come over in free agency, Jordan Perryman, and Ronald Kent here kind of shift into things. And then we also saw, obviously, I texted you, Christophe Boyu taking a few snaps there at halfback in the fourth quarter. So, Blake, I'm curious, what's your confidence in the secondary, and what would you like to see them improve here in week 3?
Yeah, I mean, I'm fairly confident with the secondary still. I mean, we saw Ronald Kent, arrow up kind of fame, get into the game on Saturday. Josh Woods, of course, with that big fumble recovery. I'm not too worried about the secondary. The one thing I will say is this might be the perfect game for that secondary because Zach Colaros, correct me if I'm wrong, he might have thrown a garbage time touchdown in week number 1, but I don't think he's thrown a touchdown pass. Yeah, he has not thrown a touchdown pass yet this year, and I think the Lions can really exploit that in Friday night's matchup. Send some maybe heavier packages, some 5-man rushes, some 6-man rushes, help out that secondary, and see what happens from there.
Yeah, I'll be honest. I'm a little bit more worried than I think you are, Blake. And I definitely emphasize a little worried, right? Only 2 games into the season, but like I mentioned, a lot of new faces, a lot of question marks whether these guys are going to be um, able to, I guess, hold the standard of last year, right? We saw Jalen Edwards Cooper obviously go to Saskatchewan in free agency, and didn't have gaudy interception numbers or anything like that, but to have the respect of a CFL veteran like Gary Peters, I want to say he's up over 10 years now in the CFL. A guy like Gary Peters easily tries to or easily will say, I'm going to take the boundary side of the field. Blake, I'm not too sure if you're familiar with boundary and field side. Obviously, field side, the more wider side of the field where the hash marks, right? If let's say the ball's in the left hash mark, you're going to have more field to the right side, and the boundary will be to your left side because it's the shorter side because the boundary, those hash marks down the middle are closer to the sidelines, right? So the boundary side of the field is where you're going to get more targets in the CFL, right? That field side, why they say Canadians play the field corner or sometimes they play the field receivers because, um, for one, as you've heard all these years, I'm sure Blake watching the CFL, it's such a far thrown to the field side of the field, right? Because the CFL field is much wider than the NFL, and if you're on the opposite hash, those throws are very very far and can be very dangerous if you're just the slightest bit late or behind. Um, so, you know, for Gary Peters to kind of give the respect to Jalen Edwards Cooper last year to say, you know what, I'm not going to go to boundary and field side. I'm going to stick on the left side. You stick on the right side. We'll just kind of split the Gary Peters didn't seek out taking the boundary receiver, which would have been, the Kenny Lawlers, the Geno Lewises, the guys like that, where he takes them on every snap. He said, you know what, Jalen Edwards Cooper, I'm going to trust you enough where that you can guard them on some of these plays, and did a decent job, right? Where the secondary, I think, was one of our strengths last year. Marcus Sales obviously isn't returning, got cut in training camp. TJ Lee's out with the Achilles injury, which I'm very hopeful that Keon and TJ are going to come back from these Achilles injuries. But I do remind people that you know it's not always 100% that these guys are going to come back within the first year of tearing their Achilles or tearing their ACLs. A lot of times, folks, if we're being honest with ourselves and be honest, I know it's hard, but it definitely worries me that maybe the Lions don't get a receiver one in Keon Hatcher to end the year, or they don't get their starting halfback to end the year in TJ Lee because, yes, they're maybe in the lineup, but maybe it's not them. It's not the guys that we're accustomed to, the TJ Lee that's accustomed to guarding some of the best slots in the league, playing very well, and Keon Hatcher being one of the best receivers in the league. Obviously, I think they're going to be at a level where it looks pretty good to a lot of people, right? But I think, do we get them? Do we get the true them? Where do we see 100% of them? Where it's maybe 80 or 85% of them? I don't think I need to remind Blake or maybe even kind of hit a soft spot, but I think of a guy like Ilya Mikheyev, look like absolute a shell of himself this year after tearing his ACL. Take a breath, Canucks fans. If we don't trade him, I feel like just give him some time. Maybe not going to see him to the level, but maybe you don't have to be screaming that we pay this guy $5.5 million or whatever it is to basically do nothing. Give these guys some time. They had some serious surgeries, and I know it's crazy because we're in an era where kind of all these things can be like, oh, he just tore his ACL. He'll come back from it. He tore his ACL. He'll come back from it. I feel like people forgot that like 15, 20 years ago, these injuries were considered like career-ending injuries. Tearing your Achilles kind of, or tearing his Achilles kind of ended Kobe's career, right? So these are serious injuries that are not guaranteeing these guys come back. So for me, very, very concerned about the secondary. I've seen a little bit more in the receiving core that gives me confidence. A guy like Justin McInnes has stepped up. Alex Hollins has stepped up. Nobody in the secondary outside of really Gary Peters has stepped up to me that said, you know what, give me a little bit of confidence that this group can kind of be a group that they can rely on deep in the season. Because I think if they make a play on Saturday, I think it changes the kind of momentum of things, and hopefully maybe the Lions are able to win that without even or without having a little bit more stress on their hands. 'Cause I know they end up winning by 9, but maybe it's winning by 17-20 instead. So Blake, before we get into picking this game, I did actually, I guess, one last thing that I didn't think was a little bit of news that I didn't see. I don't know if you did, but David Neville was put on the 6-game injured list, but Michael Couture was also put on the 6-game injured list, I guess, last week, late in the week. So the Lions will be without 2 of their starting offensive linemen for probably likely more than 6 games or for 6 games, which is interesting because the Lions did play not bad, right? Because I think a lot of their pressure was probably summed up to the pressure that and the blitzes that Calgary was sending. So not really much the offensive line could do. Um, Tyler Packer wasn't really heard of, which is a good thing from an offensive lineman, right? There was no holdings, there was no bad snaps, there was no nothing like that. So good for him. Chris Schleger, I believe, is how you pronounce his name, stepped up for David Neville. And I believe same for him, knock on wood, that there was no flags, no holdings or anything like that, no sacks that were credited to him, if I'm not mistaken. I don't think VA actually got sacked on the evening. So hopefully this is a upward trend for this offensive line, but still is a little bit of a question mark, or I guess kind of all eyes on the offensive line position every week. That are they going to be able to protect VA enough? Are they going to have one of those stinkers? Hopefully, it's not this week. So, Blake, as I transition. And as I guess we close out, I will kind of tease my 3 keys of the week before I release the video on Friday. My 3 keys of the week this week are number one, Blake, start fast because the Lions have not started fast the first 2 weeks. And I think it is important to jump out on Winnipeg. Make sure that doubt creeps in fast and early. And I feel like if Winnipeg gets a fast start, that is a recipe for disaster because that crowd is going to go absolutely bonkers. They're going to start to feel it. They're going to start to get momentum. And I think it's a just bad time for the Lions to start slow. Get momentum on your side. Get the lead early. And I think you're able to close this one out. Number two, Blake, I'm going to dip into one of my keys from last week because I didn't release a video. Sorry, folks. I was at the game, wasn't able to make it work. Actually, tried to do a 3 keys to the game victory with Blake, and the audio wasn't able to come through good enough to post it. So my second key is win the turnover battle. I think if you can keep forcing turnovers on Zach Collaros and keeping the football in offense, will only give you good things offensively and defensively. And number three, Blake, is make Winnipeg one-dimensional, especially without Brady Oliveira. I think you need to not try to sell out for the run, but they didn't really show much confidence or like willingness to run with Johnny Augustine last week. I really like what Johnny Augustine can bring, but for me, when they run, because I don't think they're going to run much, because for whatever reason they don't want to without Brady. I think when they run, you need to limit them, make them pass the ball, make them have not a lot of confidence in Johnny Augustine. I want to say he finished with like 7 carries. If you can make them finish with under 10 carries by Johnny Augustine, that is a perfect mark because that means Zach Collaros is going to be dropping back to pass a lot. And I think our pass rushers are going to get home because they're going to start to get in rhythm here. I think that group is on a upward trajectory. I'm going to call my shot here now, Blake. I'm going to say Sione Tihema. I know he's had the first 2 good weeks, but I'm going to say he gets his first sack of the year and gets on the board. If that is, I'm kind of having a flashback now. Maybe he had a sack in week 1. No, maybe
He did, yeah. It was the Tebow Demaye touchdown.
Right. Okay. So I'm going to say, I guess he gets his second sack of the year because he's been very active. He's been all over the field, tackles for loss, all that good stuff. I'm going to say Sione Tehama gets another sack on Friday night. So, Blake, let's start with our first pick of the week, and let's go to Thursday night tomorrow, folks. The Ottawa Red Blacks traveling to Montreal, and I am actually, Blake, looking so forward to this game. Really like what I saw from Ottawa in week 1. It's a shame that Shane's not on here. It's a shame that Shane's not on here to talk about his team winning in week 1 and getting the victory over Ottawa or Winnipeg. But Montreal has looked damn good through the first 2 weeks, especially your guy Tyson Philpott. I know you're hyped about that. Not as good a week 2, but when you have 140 yards and 2 touchdowns, it's hard to kind of one up yourself in the next week. But I only expect big things from Tyson Philpott throughout the season. I'm glad you called your shot. I think that's a good call. Maybe not going to win all the things I believe you said that he's going to win, but I think he's in line to win at least maybe one, maybe even 2 of those. We'll see. But this should be a absolute slobber knocker tomorrow. Curious to see how Drew Brown kind of rises to the occasion on the road when things are going to be a little bit more different. Montreal, obviously, their first home game, Blake, rising at the banner, I think. If they're not rising the banner, they're obviously kind of going to be celebrating the Grey Cup in some sort of fashion. So should be a lot of energy behind Montreal. I will go to you first, Blake, and I will ask you who's going to win and why.
Yeah, I think tomorrow night it's going to be the Montreal Alouettes. There's just too much for them going right, for them not to win this football game. As you mentioned, the Grey Cup banner is being raised. It's their home opener. They're in front of their fans for the first time this year. They're 2-0 already. And they're 2-0 already. Yeah, the Red Blacks beat the Bombers last week, but I just think there's way too much going against the Red Blacks. I think the Red Blacks keep it close, but I think that the Alouettes, pardon me, win the football game by a final score of 27-20.
Okay, Blake, and I will also take Montreal, but before I do, I did get a little bit of ahead of myself. We're gonna rename this, and we're gonna do the CFL Quick Picks. This is our segment here, Blake, at the end of the night. So it'll be 30 minutes where Blake and I and Shane will talk about our picks throughout the week, give a little reason why, and give our picks, maybe a little betting advice if you're Shane. I wouldn't say advice on my part because I wouldn't listen to me, but maybe you should listen to Blake after last week because Blake, I'm not too sure if you know, I obviously you do with that little grin on your face, but Blake, folks, was 4-0 last week. Blake, don't think I forgot, buddy. I'll give you your credit, give you your flowers on camera this week because Blake went. Was it 0-4 last week, Blake? 0-4 winless last week. He
Yeah.
corrects that. He says, you know what? It's my time to get back on track. 4-0 picked every game right last week. Me and Shane actually, Blake, to take a little shine off you, went 3-1 together. We actually had different picks, so I believe he picked. Was it what is it?
I
He
think
picked
you
Ottawa.
picked
You
Bombers.
and
Yeah.
yeah, you and Shane picked Ottawa to win, while I picked Winnipeg, and me and you picked Saskatchewan, while he picked Hamilton, and we both picked Montreal and BC to win. So the total to tally everything up after 2 weeks, we got a three-way tie, folks. Everybody is at four and actually no, I yeah 4-4 if I'm not mistaken. After 2 weeks, so it is a good race. We are all tied at 4-4 after 2 weeks. Blake and I will take Montreal to start, and then I don't think we have to get into it too long. That Blake and I will both take BC, but Blake, is there any other final thoughts on BC's game Friday night before we get to the Saturday night game?
No, I think it'll once again it'll be another close game. Surprise, surprise with the CFL. They released a stat today that 7 of the first 8 CFL games this year have been decided in the final 3 minutes. I think that continues this week. But you know what? I'll say that Sean White hits a walk-off field goal, and the Lions win by a final score of 31-28.
I'm glad you called the walk-off field goal, Blake. You stole my thunder, but I'm glad you called it, buddy, because that was exactly where I was going. I'm going to go close to you. I'm going to go 35-32. The BC Lions win in a shootout. I think this is going to be a game that both teams kind of wake up a little bit offensively, and the Lions pull it out late because unfortunately for the Bombers, and we're going to kick them over down and not feel bad about it. They are injured and banged up. I want to say they are without one of their starting corners as well. I believe he was ruled out today, as well as Brady Oliveira ruled out today. And obviously, we know that Kenny the King Lawler on the 6-game injured won't be playing. Not too sure. Didn't see anything actually on Celestin Haba. If anyone's a Winnipeg Blue Bombers fan in the chat here, let me know if he was put on the 6 game earlier in the week, or maybe if he just wasn't on the injury report after his knee injury, if I'm not mistaken, that he left the game with on last Thursday. Maybe it was not as serious as it appeared to be. And because I don't remember seeing him on the injury report, but maybe I'm blind and skipped over it. But kick the
Sorry,
Bombers while they're
who was
down,
that
man.
again, Cole?
Celestin Haba, did you see if he was placed on the 6-game injured list or
I
anything like that?
I don't believe he was on the injury report at all this week.
Yeah, so I wonder if he was deemed healthy. I would think he would maybe put on the 6-game injured list because if he was still dealing with it, he'd be kind of a full or DNP. He would at least have a status because he did leave the game with knee injury. So I think he would be on the injured list if he was possibility of playing. So the Bombers are beat up. That is no excuse or no reason why the Lions should not let up and absolutely try to embarrass them if they can. I don't think they're going to be able to like they did last year in Week 3. If I remind people, I want to say it was a 30-6 romp for the BC Lions in Winnipeg last year. Don't think we're going to see anything like that, but I'm going to predict 35-32. The Lions take this one. And Blake, let's get to Saturday, which I will be missing the majority of this game. I think we're going to agree on this. I don't think there's going to be much to be debated about this once again, but I'm going to go with Toronto, Blake. I'll pass things over to you. Unfortunately, before I do, Blake, I will miss this game. I'm going to be at a little bit of a wedding little party, so I'm excited for that, but I'm a little bit bummed because, as you know, I'm a big fan of watching the Elks play. But from what I've seen after week one, really want to tune into Argos games, so going to have to kind of find a time on Sunday to rewatch that. But Blake, who do you got and why?
I'm gonna surprise you with this one, Cole, but I'm
We're
actually
gonna
gonna
take
go with.
Edmonton.
I am. I'm gonna go with the Edmonton Elks to win this game. I'm still not convinced with the Toronto Argos. I know what happened in Week 1, them beating our BC Lions. I also know what's happened with the Elks in their first 2 weeks, blowing a big lead in week number 1, and then having a very good chance to upset the defending Grey Cup champions before kind of giving that away at the end of the game. But I think the Elks know how important this football game is. They know they can't start a season 0-5, 0-6. If they do, of course, with them playing our BC Lions next week, if they lose this game and they lose on next Thursday, I think Chris Jones's job is as an Alex head coach is done for. So I think the players know that as well. I think they're going to come out as hard as they absolutely can, and they're going to shock that BMO crowd and win on Saturday.
Well, Blake, speaking of shock, 7:30 and we're not done, so you're right about that. But that is quite shocking to me. Maybe shocking is the wrong word. Surprising to me, because I just thought you'd go with Toronto. I cannot for another week pick Edmonton and be disappointed yet again. Now I've been on the train a little bit longer than you, going back to last year of trying to just will my heart to picking the Elks and saying they're going to win this week. They're going to win this week. And for too long have they disappointed me, and for no longer I can put my faith in them. So I don't hate it overall, Blake. Toronto, would it be surprising that Cam Dukes let Toronto drop this one after looking like, a great player in week one? Just due to the simple fact that no, he's not a bad player, but maybe he's just coming, the dips, ebbs and flows of kind of a long season and him being a first year starter, right? That's going to happen. I think I really like what I've seen from Cam Dukes. I think there's a future for him in the CFL. I'd like to see him given kind of the confidence of a franchise, giving him the keys to a team, and kind of, you're going to be my franchise quarterback. Maybe it's in Toronto, maybe not. Does it happen this week? I don't think it does, because I think Edmonton's defense is their weak point. Their offense has been able to keep them in games, like I was mentioning. McLeod Beth Thompson's kind of been able to keep them consistent, but their defense has a lot of question marks. I'm glad you touched on Chris Jones. I was very vocal in the blue and orange. Shout out to the blue and orange hour, Blake. I know you kind of how we got introduced to each other and kind of the blue and orange hour last year. I was very vocal of Chris Jones, especially with kind of him really not really putting a leash on Taylor Cornelius and letting him go out there, lose games, not all on the shoulders of Taylor Cornelius, but losing games the way they did. I was very just kind of, why not trade for it? You draft him in the first round. You specifically, your regime, not a past regime, your regime draft him in the first round. Why not put him out there if Taylor Cornelius and the offense is this bad? Your results are this bad. It can't hurt. And I was calling for his job last year, wrongfully so. People were telling me that, give Chris Jones till year 3 and things will turn around. Give Chris Jones till year 3. Well, it's year 3, folks, and things have not turned around. I'm glad you said it. It is time to have this man's head on a goddamn plate in Edmonton. If they don't win, which I don't think they're going to win in the next few weeks, this guy needs to get the out of Edmonton, because you are not the man to change things around. You've had 3 years in charge. Things have not changed. Discipline issues still happen. It's painful when these mistakes have, a couple of friends on the team. Shout out to Damon. Shout out to Gavin. I'm a supporter now, I believe is what I'm calling myself, not a fan, a supporter of the Edmonton Elks. And I've wanted to see this team turn around for a while. I hate to say it because I'm kind of contradicting myself so much, and I'm glad I'm glad I guess those kind of videos are from last year, and the follower count was a lot less back then. But I was not the biggest MBT fan, kind of going back to 2022, I guess it is. I guess those were actually, to take it back even further, the CFL Spaces days, Blake, was way back then. I wasn't the biggest fan of MBT. And then when Trey Ford last year, I was wanting him to come in. Now I'm kind of, even if Chris Jones gets fired, I feel like why kind of ruin the season? If you fire a coach mid-season, you're really probably not going to expect to get in the playoffs. Why ruin Trey Ford out there this year? Keep MBT until maybe after Labor Day. Give Trey Ford again like he did last year, the last maybe 5 or 6 games. Let him learn into the offseason. Know that that's your guy in the future, and then let him kind of get the reins from there. I cannot pick the Elks, Blake. I'm gonna go with Toronto, and that will be where our hopefully my one-up advantage comes into place there from this week. Blake, let's get into the last game of the week before we get out of here, and it is with the Hamilton Tiger Cats traveling to Saskatchewan in their back-to-back. Blake, I will start first with surprising picks. I am going to go with Hamilton Tiger Cats, actually. Now, I actually have loved what I've seen from Saskatchewan. I think Saskatchewan is going to be a pain in the rear end of our BC Lions all year long, Blake. I think they're going to be, wouldn't be surprised if for a majority of the season they're maybe winning the Western Division just because they're already one game up on the Lions here so far. But I think it's incredibly difficult to beat a team back to back throughout the CFL season. And as much as I would like to kind of hate to admit it, I would kind of eat some crow here. Goalie Levi Mitchell has looked good through 2 weeks, and the Hamilton Tiger Cats have kind of came out on the short end of the stick on both side of things. Kind of what you're kind of putting your faith into the Elks of the Elks have kind of played good for the first 2 weeks, and they've came on the right side of the wrong side of things. I too am going to put my faith in the Hamilton Tiger Cats, even though I like Saskatchewan more. I'm going to go with the Hamilton Tiger Cats to win this one in their back-to-back. Blake, who are you picking and why?
You had a convincing argument, but I'm still going to go with the Saskatchewan Roughriders to be 3-0 after this week's game. They've done it twice so far this season where they've come back from big deficits. Of course, on Sunday night, it was 10 points with 3 minutes left that they were able to come back on. And then in week number 1, it was 13 points. I think, and rightfully so, as it should, I think Mosaic Stadium is going to be absolutely rocking on Sunday night for that Riders home opener. And I just have a really hard time picking against teams in their home opener. They're seeing their fans for their first time. I say that, and then I guess I picked against Hamilton last week. But I think the Riders, they're just a better team than Hamilton. I was quite surprised that Hamilton was winning the game for almost the entirety of that game on Sunday. And I don't think they'll be able to replicate that. Cole Levi Mitchell is going to throw the ball all around the field, but whether his receivers are going to catch is a completely different story. They've had problems with drop after drop after drop, and the biggest one was that Tim White. He had it, and then it came up in the air and was intercepted that led to the game-winning field goal. The Tiger Cats, we predicted them to be one of the worst, if not the worst team in the CFL, and I think there's a reason why the Riders go 3-0.
Yeah, it's crazy to me that even guys because like you mentioned, drop issues in Hamilton, but even for guys like Tim White, which is so weird. Going back to all 3 weeks, I believe he's had drop issues. I know week 2 he did, or excuse me, all 2 weeks. We're not even through 3 weeks. I'm trying to get through them, Blake. But just so curious because Tim White's been sure-handed in the past and one of the best receivers in the CFL, and he's had some drop issues through 2 games here. I'm going to try to will Hamilton's way to a victory, and I will pick Hamilton, Blake. This is where we have a chance to separate ourselves, Blake. Picking 2 different games this week. I love to see it, and I'm sure the folks tuning in love to see it as well. Blake couldn't get us out of here before 7:30, but basically an hour and a half episode, which is way not way shorter, but just it's a little bit nicer. I feel like, Blake. 90 minutes able to kind of come on and get out of here, and still enjoy the evening after working all that stuff. You know what I've realized, Blake? We're talking like my mouth. I don't feel the numbing pain anymore, which is so good. Doesn't feel like my lips are flat. But Blake, live on the air before we get out of here. We are at 190 subscribers on the YouTube channel. So we are 10 short, folks, of our goal of 200 by Canada Day. We have 24 people in here watching right now. I want to say, if the numbers are correct, 75%. So what is that, Blake? 75%, 24. Can you do quick mental math?
Like 18 to 20 people, something like that.
18 to 20 people. Blake, you are. Damn, that was good, man. Mental math on the fly. I love it. Not too sure, folks. Don't listen to us too, for sure. But 18, 20 people are not subscribed. Please head on over to there. Head on over to the Canadian Football Fanatics on YouTube right now if you're watching on Twitter. Subscribe to the channel. It would be greatly, greatly appreciated. It would help Blake and I reach our goal of 200 subscribers by Canada Day. When you guys subscribe, hit the little notification bell. You guys will get notified every time Blake and I go live, every time we post a YouTube short, any type of content on the channel, any one of our recap videos, any one of our BC Lions recap shows from now on, all that good stuff. You guys will get notified when we go live or post it on the channel. And lastly, the reminders. Obviously, follow us on Twitter at _CF Fanatics and at Canadian Football Fanatics on Instagram. We are on there. Apologies for both Blake and I kind of being a little bit more inactive, but just throughout the day, it's hard, folks. Working a full-time job, it's hard to get on the phone and tell your boss why you're doing it while he's trying to get you to work. So other than that, please follow us on all the social media platforms. Blake and I will be active throughout the weekend, as always, live tweeting throughout the games, stuff like that. And I see our main man, actually, Coach Phil, coming in at the end of the show. Shout out to Coach Phil. I actually tuned into a little bit of his live stream the other day. I want to say it was on Sunday there. I was live for a little bit, kind of breaking down, doing his thing on week one. And then today, I was actually bummed out. I missed it. I was at work, unfortunately, but Blake, he did his live reaction to the Arrow Up episode of Training Camp. So if I have a little bit of time tonight, maybe throw that on here after dinner and watch that. If any people are tuning in and don't know about Coach Phil, go check out his channel. Go check out his social media. He does a ton of good, funny stuff for the CFL and just a bunch of wholesome, real content that is good for the CFL. I feel like is what more people need. But until then, Blake, let's close things out. Is there any final thoughts, my friend?
Love you too, Coach Phil. But no, I think we're good. Hour 40, so we didn't quite break the 90-minute mark. But you know what? I'm really looking forward to getting that football kicked off. I'm really excited to see the Alouettes Grey Cup banner. And I hope our Lions are 2-1 when everyone tunes into our post-game recap on Friday night.
Yes, sir. So, I guess that means Coach Phil will be in BC for that. Is it week 7 game, Blake?
I think so, yeah.
I guess that means I'm gonna be making a trip over. I don't have tickets yet, but I guess that means I have to get
You're getting your ass here.
I guess I gotta get on that here. Maybe next payday or something like that. I'll make that happen. Coach, maybe message me. Let me know where you're sitting. Maybe I'll change my seats from sitting close to Blake and Jordan, and maybe I'll come try to sit next to you. But hit us up. We would definitely love to see you post game and pre-game and have some good fun. Until then, Blake, we'll see you guys next Wednesday, and we'll see you guys Friday night for BC Lions first recap live show. Happy football weekend, everybody, and we'll see you guys next week. Thanks for tuning in.